Hi, everyone. I'm a research chemist from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I'm part of a group that's prepared an activity for you to do today that's meant to show off some of the problems that we think about on a daily basis, as well as how we try to solve them. Before we get to that, I should introduce myself. My name is Noah, and I'm a graduate student in my third year. I attend the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill to obtain my PhD in chemistry. I'm also a part of CAS, which stands for Critical Aspects of Sustainability. CAS is a collaboration between different universities which involves research involving sustainable chemistry. This means that we work on chemical systems that produce valuable materials without depleting precious natural resources. CAS includes 3 different universities: the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, which is located in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. The collaboration includes undergraduates who are working towards their bachelor's degrees, graduate students who are working towards their PhDs, and professors who work with their students to advance chemical knowledge by doing chemical research. I should also mention that I'm funded by the National Science Foundation. So, let's answer this question up here, but before we do, let's pause so that we can make sure that we have this worksheet which you need to do for this activity. So, what exactly are the valuable materials that we're interested in as chemists? One particularly important one is ammonia, or NH3. As you can tell from its chemical formula, ammonia is composed of 1 nitrogen atom and 3 hydrogen atoms. Ammonia is an incredibly important chemical. Does anyone know what ammonia is most commonly used for? One common use for ammonia is in cleaning agents such as Clorox wipes, Lysol, or Windex. It's also used in smelling salts, which are compounds used to alleviate fainting. Another particularly profound use for ammonia is in fertilizer. Ammonia-based fertilizers are vital for help growing crops to support the global population. So obviously there's a lot of people on Earth, so the question is, where do we get all of the ammonia from that we use to fertilize the crops that we eat? So livestock such as chickens and cows does indeed produce ammonia, which can be used to fertilize plants in the form of manure. However, most ammonia actually comes from the Haber-Bosch process, since these animals alone do not produce enough ammonia to feed the nearly 8 billion people that live on this planet. So this is a picture of a chemical plant that actually does the Haber-Bosch process. The reaction is used to make a majority of the world's ammonia supply. It's possibly the most important invention of modern times and is used industrially to make massive amounts of ammonia on a yearly basis. The way that it works is that Haber-Bosch converts air, or specifically the nitrogen in air, into ammonia. The ammonia produced by the Haber-Bosch process is used to support about 60% of all of the world's population by enabling a larger global food supply. Furthermore, about half of the nitrogen atoms, and this is a particularly staggering statistic, about half of the nitrogen atoms in your body likely at some point pass through the Haber-Bosch process. As you can tell from these statistics, the Haber-Bosch process has been a tremendous success. However, it's also responsible for vast amounts of carbon dioxide emissions. This is because the hydrogen, which is in your product ammonia, originates from methane, or CH4, and the carbon from methane ends up in CO2. Unfortunately, carbon dioxide is a major source of climate change, a major cause of climate change. Climate change is going to, and already is, affecting our planet in very profound ways. It's estimated that billions of people may be displaced from their homes due to climate change over the next 50 years. We're already, in fact, seeing examples of disasters caused by climate change, such as wildfires, hurricanes, and refugees forced to migrate due to dwindling food supply. Obviously, these impacts of climate change need to be minimized as much as we possibly can. As chemists, we're interested in sustainably producing ammonia, and therefore we spend a lot of time thinking about this research question. What alternative methods to the Haber-Bosch process can we use to make ammonia? You don't have to answer this question now, but today we're going to dive into it a little more deeply. And to do that, we need the scientific method. The research question, which I showed on the previous slide, actually represents the beginning of our entrance into the scientific method. You may have heard of this concept before. It starts with a question. The question can come from a variety of places, including observations that we make ourselves in lab, or from ideas that we have based on observations that we hear about other chemists in the world having. Some big questions that a scientist might aim to answer with the scientific method include the following. How can I make fuel that doesn't pollute the atmosphere when I use it to run my car? How can I build a more compact and efficient computer? And of course, there's the question that we're thinking about today. What alternative methods can we use to make ammonia? The next step of the scientific method is centered around trying to explain these observations based on our own chemical intuition. This explanation is called a hypothesis. After we formulate our hypothesis, we finally get to the part where we get to do an experiment. This is one really fun part of chemistry. Experiments in chemistry can vary a lot, but they generally involve mixing chemicals together, heating them, or shining a light on them. Once we set up an experiment, it's important to write down all of your observations as they occur. A few changes that you might see that are worth writing down are color changes, bubble formation, or new smells. However, that list is not comprehensive. Any observation that you think is worth making and writing down is probably worth recording as you're doing your experiment. Next, we analyze our results. To do this, we can compare the observations that we made to our hypothesis. So the observations that we made in our experiment, the hypothesis that we originally had. And if the hypothesis matches our observations, we may have discovered the answer to an important question, synthesized an exciting new molecule, or found a solution to a big problem. If it doesn't, that's okay, because we can revise our hypothesis and perform a modified experiment based on our previous results. In this sense, the scientific method rarely ever ends. There's always more to learn from our experiments, which gives us a brilliant opportunity to continue the cycle by proposing more hypotheses and re-entering the cycle based on the results from the first experiment. Now that we have our research question and our understanding of our scientific method, let's move on and formulate a hypothesis. I'll pause here though so that you can answer your questions on your worksheet. Now that we've solidified our research question, let's formulate a hypothesis. As a reminder, our research question is, what alternative methods can we use to make ammonia? As we mentioned before, one major goal we have in studying this question is choosing ways to make ammonia that are sustainable. That means choosing compounds which are plentiful and do not produce environmentally harmful products like carbon dioxide when we have them undergo reactivity to make ammonia. Let's think about some abundant chemicals on Earth to decide where we can get our nitrogen and hydrogen. The first abundant resource is air. Here's a pie chart which shows the composition of Earth's atmosphere. As you can see, most is nitrogen, though oxygen and argon also represent a significant percentage as well. The next is dirt, particularly in the Earth's crust. Here's another pie chart for this natural resource. As you can see, most of the elemental composition of dirt is oxygen, with other components being elements such as silicon, aluminum, and iron. Finally, we have to consider other resources that are available. These include plants and water. Now that we have all of these up here, let's think about sources of nitrogen and hydrogen that we can use for making ammonia without making carbon dioxide. Does anyone see any? So as you can see, nitrogen is a major component of air, and hydrogen is a major component of water. These two both could be incredibly useful in making ammonia. In fact, one major source of ammonia that's naturally occurring comes from lightning strikes, which provide the electrical energy necessary for water and air to react and make ammonia. It's also useful to note that there are organisms capable of making ammonia from natural resources. Plants sometimes have bacteria growing in their roots, which make ammonia that help support the plants during their life. Now, let's revisit our question yet again. We've agreed that air and water are fantastic candidates for making ammonia. Now the question is how we can get them to react. What source of energy might we be able to use? As you can see, and as I mentioned before, electrical energy is a viable source of energy to use to make ammonia from water and air. However, it's impractical to summon lightning on command to do this reaction, so let's think about how we can supply electrical energy to a system to make ammonia. A battery is a fantastic option for this. Now that we have all of the components we need, let's write down a possible answer to our research question. What alternative methods can we use to make ammonia? So you should consider the materials that we're using as well as the source of energy that we're using. Together, this answer will be our hypothesis.